person with journalist Maria Hinojosa on Wednesday, September 21st. And now to start tonight's program. Meet the author Antonio Martorell, Un Bosque de Palabras y Numeros, A Forest of Words and Numbers, hosted by Carmen Febo San Miguel. Tonight's talk will last about 90 minutes. At 7:15 for the last 15 minutes, we will have a Q&A period, so you can post your questions in the chat box during the talk, and we will read them at the Q&A time. And if you like this content, please subscribe to Tayer's YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter. And at this time, I'm going to introduce our host. Carmen Febo San Miguel was the executive director of Taller for over 20 years. In 2021, she retired. As the executive director of Taller, she has worked with Antonio Martorell on a number of his shows. Restos is the third show at Taller and his first in the new building. So Carmen, if you would like to take it away.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And, we're all here dealing with this new technology that some of us have better skills than others. Right, Tonio? And it is a pleasure to me to have this opportunity to have a conversation with my dear friend and long-term collaborator, Antonio Martorell. Antonio Martorell is an artist that I've known his trajectory for many, many years. As Lisa mentioned, he has been a guest artist at Taller on a number of occasions, I think a total of 3. And in some ways, those visits have represented different phases in Taller's history. It is the first time that Tonio shows in the new gallery, in the new building. I know that it is also a pleasure for him to have been able to join us here because he had no idea and no knowledge of the new space. Tonio is a polyfaceted artist. He's a printmaker, painter, draftsman, installation artist, performer, stage and costume designer, writer, illustrator, teacher, and one of the most prolific Puerto Rican artists in the Puerto Rico contemporary art scene. His print work is directly connected to the graphic traditions initiated by the masters in the islands in the 50s, called the 50s generation. And interesting, which is also something that has happened to other artists in Puerto Rico, like Mirna Baez. Tonio did not start out to be an artist. He actually was studying diplomacy in Georgetown University in Washington. One of the questions that I would like to explore later, Tonio, is how did you get bit by the artist bug? At any rate, at that time, he received a scholarship from the Ferrer Foundation and went to Madrid to study drawing and painting under Julio Martín Caro. And then he returned to Puerto Rico to study under Lorenzo Marc in the graphic workshop of the Institute of Culture. In 1968, he founded his own independent print studio, Alacran Studio. Tonio is also an incredible teacher. He has not only taught in Philadelphia to our students, but he has and done workshops for artists here in Philadelphia, but he's taught in Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, and lots of other places. He has created, organized, and sponsored countless artistic, community, and multimedia events. He is also an incredibly prolific and continuously innovative artist, communicating his freedom and exceptional talent. And what brings us today is that particular combination of his not only incredible visual talents, but also language talents. And I hope that we can explore that in more detail with Tonio today. So, Lisa, I think, and Dominic, we need to let Pablo know in Puerto Rico that they need to unmute Tonio so that he can start the conversation. There you go. Hi.
Thank you for unmuting me. I mean, I'm not used to being mute.
Well, this is true.
They try quite often to mute me, but they haven't succeeded.
This is very true. So Tonio, how about telling us a little bit of that, trajectory, of your early years as a diplomatic student, and then, switching focus and career into your talents as a visual artist?
Well, as every child, I used to draw, and maybe I drew a little better than some. And I was lucky enough that I had an aunt. She was called Tia Fina, because she was the one in the family that took to cultural events, and she took me to concerts, opera, theater, art exhibitions, and allowed me to take lessons with a local teacher of art in the neighborhood. And I do things in school, whatever. And I liked doing it, but it was not a strong vocation at all. Not strong enough so that when I was in my early teens, I had the fantasy of becoming an artist because it sounded glamorous. So I told my mother, and she, as we say in Spanish, puso el grito en el cielo. She screamed to high heaven. She said, "No, over my dead body. You love to eat." I was quite a chubby child. So she said, "You'll die of hunger. Te vas a morir de hambre. I won't stand for any of my children to go hungry." So that really set aside my artistic vocation for at least 10 years. So my mother, like all mothers at that time, we were coming out of a misery in Puerto Rico, and we were all poor at that time. And she wanted me to be a doctor. So I went into University of Puerto Rico in what was called the pre-med. But I couldn't hit it at all. I never liked mathematics. I never liked science, and I was terrible at it. But I got exposed to the humanities very early on, and the University of Puerto Rico changed my life. Really, I remember my first year we read The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann in English, Romancero Gitano by Lorca, Canto General by Neruda, of course, La Iliada, Reneida, all that. And I knew by then that I had to switch gears and go somewhere. And I wanted to get away from the island, to look and be part of the big world outside. So also, I believe I was very optimistic and ignorant. So I thought that diplomacy was about making peace. So, and I found out that there was no way of learning diplomacy in Puerto Rico. So it was a very happy coincidence that I could go out and at the same time study something that was fanciful also. At the time, there was this television show called Diplomatic Courier, where Cesar Romero used to hang around, flying everywhere with a briefcase handcuffed to his hand and having these wonderful cocktails in these parties with these beautiful blondes all around him. So I said, well, that sounds like fun. So I got a scholarship, went to Georgetown, and in the very first year, I knew that was not my thing, not at all. Jesuits are wonderful teachers, and they taught me, first of all, well, the rules of the game, power politics, and that actually diplomacy was not so much the art of making peace as the art of getting away with what you want without going to war. So they also taught me that something that I had an inkling of, but didn't have it so black and white, that my country, Puerto Rico, was a colony of the United States. And the only chance I had of becoming a diplomat was to join the diplomatic corps of the United States, going to State Department. I said, oh no. About that time, I got radicalized and I said, no way. But since I had a scholarship, and I'm very thoughtful about that, I'm very disciplined, I had to finish. So I got my degree, my mother was happy. And by the way, during all those years, in order to eat a little better, I used to paint portraits of the girlfriends of my friends in the diplomatic school, who were all sons and daughters of very rich families. They came from, their parents were ambassadors or CEOs of transnationals, or presidents of banana republics, whatever. So I used to paint their gorgeous girlfriends, including Hollywood starlets, and get paid for it and eat a little bit better than my usual fried Chinese rice. So I said, well, maybe I won't go hungry at all if I end up being an artist, because I am eating better by painting these portraits. So let's give it a try. And anyway, I found out I'm not good for anything else. I say, I have fun drawing and painting, and I do it pretty well for not being educated as such. So why not give it a try? So after I graduated, I gave my mother the diploma. She was very happy. She went to the graduation in her finest. She was gorgeous. She loved it. And then I came home. I did some society portraits, as they were called, of friends of the family and whatnot, and raised some money. And I had the good fortune that a very good friend of mine was a nephew to Luis Ferré. And he took me to the old Museo de Ponce, and Don Luis saw my things, which were not very good, really. I don't know why he saw them, but he must have seen something. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be an artist. He said, and how are you going to go about it? I said, well, I want to study art. And where? Well, I want to study in Spain, because they have great painting there. She said, okay. And when do you want to go there? I said, well, whenever I can. And he said, how about next week going to my office in San Juan, and I'm going to give you a check so you can go to Spain for a whole year, and I'll pay the expenses. I say, okay. When I spent that year in Spain, I was very lucky, a wonderful mentor there. When I came back, I was even luckier. I landed in the workshop of Lorenzo Mara, Rafael Tufino, and the rest is history.
Indeed, the rest is history. So I know that we have some slides that we're going to show at some point, and some of them are going to give people that have not been able to come and visit your show, which if you're in Philadelphia, you should come. The show is going to be up until, I believe, the end of September. But just to give a flavor of that work that we're going to be talking throughout our conversation this afternoon, we have some images for those that are not familiar with your work. We can go to the next. So this is
toda esta exposición es una reflexión plástica sobre la lucha entre la industria y la naturaleza que destruye la industria desde la perspectiva del arte. Arresto surge de varios orígenes. Uno de ellos es mi amor por los árboles. Los árboles son una constante en mi trabajo. Entonces decidí hacer una exposición en devolverle al árbol lo que es del árbol. Por eso, restos. Con los restos de los muebles, restituirle al árbol aquello que le quitamos. También me gustaba mucho la combinación de las palabras arresto. Es detener, es para, hasta ahí llegaste. Ahora, fíjate, esto se hizo del siguiente modo. Esta guata se puso en el piso. Entintamos estas piezas de madera y entonces le dimos con un marrón y a veces no era suficiente. Así es que le bailamos, fue como una danza. En mi taller se convirtió en una sala de música, de un soneo. Esto porque de repente había pum, 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 una sinfonía caribeña sin tambor. Entonces, ahora sí que vamos a gozar. Y empecé a hacer el árbol caído y cambié la posición de los paneles, lo que estaba abajo de arriba, pero me gustó mucho la diagonal, la caída. Y ahí fue que puse, debajo de eso puse todas las maderas o parte de las maderas, las que son partes del mueble, que reconocía y que está a los pies del árbol caído, como rindiendo testimonio de lo que era. Esto es puro accidente feliz de nuevo. Yo hice eso a cada uno aparte. Cuando los puse juntos, se creó el diseño. Es el diseño orgánico, porque cada número tiene un diseño y entonces sucede esto. Y parece una reja también, es una reja irregular con un diseño que cambia en cada renglón. Y eso uno no lo planifica, eso es un regalo que te da el proceso. Por eso es que hay que confiar en los procesos del arte, en los procesos de vida, que es lo mismo. Uno no hace lo que sabe, uno aprende haciendo. Y entonces dijimos, no, espérate, hay que aprovechar esos dos niveles. Así que pusimos este panel aquí y este panel acá, de tal modo que cuando lo miras desde acá, se convierte en un bosque, en una floresta. Se une, pero se une con dos niveles, como son los árboles.
So, Tonya, unfortunately, for some reason, the subtitles did not show. Do you want to use a few sentences to describe a little bit the work that was in the gallery that we just showed?
Well, it was all about the trees. And it was way before Hurricane Maria hit the island. And I've loved trees all my life, and it's been the subject matter of many of my works. So I decided to give back to the forest what was taken from it. So I looked around my home and my workshop, and I saw some old furniture that was coming apart and was eaten by termites and whatever. So I broke it apart and began inking it and printing it on this felt materials and big scale, like making a forest out of the remains of the forest, the wood that we had taken away from it. So that was way before Hurricane Maria, but then it became quite apropos because after Hurricane Maria, trees fell all over our garden, and I did some other things with the trees. But actually, after Maria, I did a show way after Restos that was done in Museo de Arte de Bayamón. Originally, I did one of called ¿cómo se llamaba la exposición que hice en el taller de fotoperiodismo? ¿Qué es la que? ¿Qué es la que? Es que la. ¿Qué es la que? Which in popular language among youngsters in Puerto Rico is, what's up? What's up? ¿Qué es la que? ¿Qué es la que está pasando? So, and the answer was, es que la, it's that, but es que la, when it's put together, becomes the Spanish word for obituary, esquela, death notice. And I played with words, and also it was esquela. Ela is Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico, which is the euphemism that was made up by the government to kind of camouflage the colony we live in. So esquela, ela is Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico, but it's a misname because it's neither, it would mean literally free associated state of Puerto Rico, but we are neither free nor associated nor a state. So I'm following that train of thought. The governor at the time, and I don't want even to remember his name, when Hurricane Maria devastated the island, he lied. He lied continuously about the number of the dead. He would say there were only 64 deaths in the island. And we all knew there were thousands because people were dropping dead all around us. So finally, we paid, the people of Puerto Rico, out of the meager treasury of ours, we paid $300,000 to George Washington University in DC, with combination with some Puerto Rican institution to find out how many dead. But that was months afterwards. And they finally came up with the magical number, which was near to the truth, of 2,004 something, close to 3,000. Afterwards, it came up to 4,000. But that was after we paid money we didn't have to know what we already knew. So I decided to do numbers. I had never done numbers before. I love letters, but numbers I don't like so much because I don't know how to count. I don't know how to charge. I'm a disaster with numbers. But I learned to do numbers. I did numbers, and that's one of the pieces that's hanging at the taller, which is the numbers that become an iron work, kind of like the ones that are in many Puerto Rican homes, because we're all fenced in. And then I did a book with numbers. And luckily, shortly afterwards, we got rid of that government. The governor who lied, we sent him out. So he went to Washington, and there he is. We got rid of him, but we got another one that is just as bad.
So, to bring you back to one of the really, I think, thoughts that you put out in talking about your work is the fact that, you allowed both for the creation of the forest, of the trees, right? The process sort of guiding you, and that, you say, and that artists should allow the process to inform what they do. Because in a way, that the whole thing about using the felt and throwing it on the ground and then having, using the pieces of wood to shape them and dance on it, whatever it is that your assistants, etc., did on the felt is one way of allowing the process to kind of get involved into the creation, right? But similarly with the numbers, right? How you started to work on them and play around with them, and then when the strips of numbers were created, they created another imagery that maybe you weren't even expecting.
Well, the thing is, I was taught by my maestros to be a responsible artist. One of them, Jose Antonio Torres Martino, said, Toño, to be a responsible artist means you must respond, you must answer to circumstances. And he also told me one thing that I keep repeating everywhere in every possible way. He said, there's a difference between novelty and originality. Novelty is something that is new today and it's old tomorrow. Being up to date means always being out of date. Originality is something else. Originality is going back to the origins and dig deep into your own origins and your feelings, and you dialogue with circumstances, past and present and possibly future, and answer all the questions that are posed every day in our life. I took that to heart. That's what I've been doing all my life. I have no problem in answering because I'm also always asking questions. Why is this so? Why do I have to stand for this and not get up and fight? So my own way of fighting is through my artwork. And I was lucky enough to have a good art education. And also I had a good political science education. So they kind of blended in together. And I try to make the most of what I've learned, and I keep learning. And it's an ongoing education.
And the other thing that is, in a way representative of your style, and then, I'd like to ask Nacheli to put up the next slide, is how integral language is to your work, because you were explaining in the little video how the title of the show about the trees is restos, because of the many meanings that the word restos. It's remains, but it's also stop. It's and
it's arrest.
Right.
They put handcuffs on you.
Right, and then and then also the title of the talk, a forest of words and numbers, because you're like a forest. I mean, you're not only you're visually prolific, but you're very prolific with words. And Nachelle, if you can advance, I believe that some of the text is going to be illustrated and also translated into English.
Well, that's the family album that I made to go with the Queslaque show, because shows the absence. An absence can be caused by death, but also by migration. And we're suffering now from the biggest migration wave we've had in decades. So people leave for good reason. They want to get better income that's no longer to be had in Puerto Rico. We're going through a very miserable time, lack of employment, lack of housing. We're in financial crisis every day. So I try to place that in that context. Also, in regards to your commentary about my dealing with words, well, I began my training in the graphic arts studio of the Institute of Puerto Rican Culture as a poster artist, dealing with image and words. And I learned from Maestro Omar to do calligraphy, and I learned a lot about typography. So I try, and I just go into that great tradition of Puerto Rican artists who deal with words. I began illustrating books, then I did design of books, and I've ended up writing them. There's always been, and it's due to them, the tradition of poster making in Puerto Rico. In the graphic workshop of the Institute, people came from everywhere to ask for posters. We did posters for theater, for dance, concerts, political meetings, everywhere. So the poster was at the service of a wide community, and there's always been a strong relationship between writers and visual artists, a correspondence between one and the other, because also being Puerto Rican, you're not born Puerto Rican. You become Puerto Rican by act of volition. It doesn't matter whether you're born in the island or in the state. Being Puerto Rican, you will yourself to being Puerto Rican against all odds. And the fact that you have to give testimony of what it is to be Puerto Rican, both in word and image, makes that nexus between visual artists and writers and musicians and dancers and theater people. And I inscribe my work in that tradition. So after illustrating and designing books, I have written books also. I've written and published 4 books, and I have some others that will come out soon.
And we have some of them. We have some of them in the store, so I'm gonna take this opportunity to encourage those that are listening and connected to us today to look for for the links as you can purchase these books. Some of them are bilingual, some of them have not been translated. The text that you saw, and it's something that I wanted to also bring your attention to. So Toño, one of the things that that also fascinates me about your work, and and the way that you use language. I mean, nobody can describe the essence of what you're trying to say with your art like you do. And it's really beautifully put together. And this is just a little paragraph of the a piece of the show, of course, of the that you were mentioning in terms of the dead related to the storm. But I mean, it's such, it just goes to the essence of what that work is meant to express. And I think it's it's beautiful. Let the dead rest in peace, and let the living answer for the dead. As they were trying to be ignored, we as living people have the responsibility of not allowing that to happen. And you as an artist, had this opportunity to do that with your work.
No, and I must add that at the time of Hurricane Maria, the best help we had was from the diaspora. Puerto Ricans from the state came over and sent food, medicine. They came and helped us, while our own government was very lax on that and lied all the time and did very little. Our people in the States came over and helped us, well, extraordinary way. And they pay good for bad, because that first big migration wave that was government sponsored by the Puerto Rican government to send what they considered the excess population, like dumping them, like the milk dumping back in the time where they dumped milk in the ocean in order to keep the price. Well, they dumped our people into the state in order to keep the ones that remain here to have a better living. And they explained like that. It was shamelessly, they said so. This neo-Malthusian policy, it was criminal, sending all our people over there. And that's a debt that the Puerto Ricans who remain here, like my parents and myself, I was a child, but I have relatives that were pushed away into the States and that had so much trouble. They suffered, like every migration, from the difference in culture, in religion, in language, and the racism that still goes on in the States.
Yeah, and we're gonna do a little 90-degree turn, because we're going to now sort of focus some of that of what you're describing in terms of the situation of Puerto Rico, but also your writings per se. And I think Nasheli, the next slides are going to be about Velorio novela, which is another play on words in one of the books of Toño. And I believe that you have a slight paragraph to. So if you could go to the.
Well, I have here the.
Oh, okay, yeah. Why don't you describe this, Toño?
I remember we talked about the possibility of reading from that book, El Novela, which is novela doesn't watch over the just like a wake, no vela, but it's also a novel. It's a play of words such as that Andrew Hurley, a wonderful translator that I'm fortunate to have translated into Martorell's Wake. And it's about, see, I've been around museums all my life because I love museums. I feed on them. So I've been a museum guide. I've been a museum curator, educator. I've been a museum director, and I live in museums. So as a museum guide, quite often, I find out that people tell me, what does that painting tell me? What does it say? And I always answer that, what do you say to the painting? The painting is also about a conversation between the painting and the spectator. So after having dealt with that all my life, I decided I was going to do a book in which the greatest Puerto Rican painting of all time, Francisco Oller, El Velorio, of the late 19th century, which is a wake of a child, I would have the painting taught, but not only the painting, but also the author, the artist, the materials in the painting, the brushes, the turpentine, the characters, the animals. Hasta el gato habla. Even the cat that's up there on the beam speaks. So
you know, just so that they know a little bit about, you know, what you're going to be talking about why don't you describe a little bit the scene that is in El Velorio, so people you know, there's a connection, those that are not familiar.
It's a wake in a house, a bohío in the countryside, a poor house where the baby boy who is dead, is a tradition that deals with our African ancestry. The child is watched over by the parents and the friends and relatives and the neighbors, but it's a big feast. You dance and you drink and you eat and then Francisco Oller, a greatest 19th century artist and one of the greatest ever, this big tableau, gorgeous painting, where he very critically analyzes that, putting a sharp eye on the contradictions, on the conflicts that surround the wake, the priest, the drunk. It's very complex. Then I'm going to read you a monologue. The book is all monologues. And at the end, I have a little a CD, which actors, friends of mine, gave voice to about 14 of the monologues. And I'm going to read to you part of the monologue of El Negro Pablo. And it's all beautifully translated. I am lucky enough that I have a translator that translates everything I do and makes me sound much better in English than it is in Spanish. And I tell it always, and it's true, I write in Spanish so that Andy Hurley can translate me into English and make me sound so beautiful.
And having had to translate short paragraphs of your work, I know how difficult it is.
It is difficult, and he does it in a beautiful way. But you did a great job while you translated of the book Pierde Encuentra. Now, you want me to read part of El Negro Pablo in Spanish?
Yeah, we're showing, I think, the numbers, the book about the numbers. So let's see that, and then
Okay.
you'll have the opportunity to. Nacheli
Okay.
will, will present the
Okay.
text in English, so that
Well,
while you
well,
while
I
you
did this.
talking Spanish, they can see the English.
I did these numbers when the government was lying about the dead, and I wanted to be playful. One of the things I want to really to communicate in a beautiful way things that are basically very ugly, like the silence of the dead, silencing of the dead. And los muertos cuentan. So I began doing numbers, all the numbers that I could, and playing with them so as to make people, entertain people as they glance through the pages. And we did also an animation film and video in which the numbers kind of transform into others. And los muertos cuentan. That's I enjoy doing that because I did very freely. And one of the things I enjoy most is making out of very sad and terrible things, making something beautiful in order to communicate them. See, I learned that as a poster artist from my maestro. If you want people to stop and look at a poster, regardless, and even more so if the matter at hand is terrible, is cruel, you have to present it in such an attractive way so as to catch the attention of the viewer. And once you have him, once you have his gaze imprisoned in your work, then you can get away with murder. You can show all the ugliness you want because they'll lap it up because it's done beautifully and attractive. So this is Los Muertos Cuentan. This is the numbers that I did in that book. It's a one-of-a-kind book. It's not a printed book. It's a hand-numbered book.
Hay otras sociedades que están perfectamente adecuadas a esa realidad inexorable, pero la nuestra, no.
And see, the animation was done by one of the artists who works with me in the taller, Milton Ramirez. He did all the animation. We do everything here. We do the work, we do the video, we do the radio programs, because our aim is to communicate in whichever way possible. That's why I've had with Rosa Luisa Marquez a radio program. That's the longest lasting radio cultural program in Puerto Rico in Radio Universidad. Over 35 years we've been doing it. Of course, we don't charge anything. That's one reason why they haven't kicked us out. Because we say whatever we want. And that's
not... They can't censure you either because they are not paying you.
So what else do you want me to comment? I can't hear you, Carmen.
Well, I think that the next piece is the El Velorio, and
okay.
If Nacheli can move on. Here we go. Well, this is the text in Árboles.
That's in Árboles, yeah. That we've done that. So, right. And this is the one that goes with the numbers. And El Velorio.
So yeah, so you have an excerpt that I think we have the excerpt in Spanish and then the translation next.
Yes, yes. You want me to read the Spanish, I guess.
Yes, please.
You have the English translation, which is, by the way, much better than the original in Spanish. Well, this is El Negro Pablo talking. El negro Pablo is a freed slave that is the only character in the whole painting that is looking at the dead child. Everybody else is having a fun, drinking, carousing, pinching somebody, eating, or just looking away somewhere. But el negro Pablo is looking straight at the dead body, and I imagine what he was thinking. And so I'll be the voice of the negro Pablo. Soy un hombre negro, viejo y enfermo, pero estoy vivo. O lo estuve cuando el maestro Oller me puso en esta actitud reflexiva frente al angelito. Miro con detenimiento ese pequeño cuerpo yacente y blanco, infantil y muerto. Yo he estado muerto muchas veces. Nací esclavo e invisible, salvo cuando se me mandaba a realizar una tarea, y debo aclarar que pese a mi pellejo prieto, era de las labores menos pesadas, lejos del campo, y el peonaje, pues fui esclavo de la casa, doméstico, de delantal blanco y guantes blancos en ocasiones de gala. Viví siempre próximo a los amos, limpiando, sirviendo, ayudando en la cocina cuando hacía falta. Podríamos decir que por proximidad era casi blanco, y así me trataban, decían ellos, como de la casa, ¿sí? De la casa, perteneciente a la casa, un mueble que camina, que aparta otros muebles, que los lustra y acomoda. Pero no me quejo. En comparación con el cafetal, los abayaldes y el látigo del capataz, mi vida era fácil. Y este niño, esta criaturita, aunque de pobre cuna, blanco, aquí está ante mis ojos, muerto antes que yo, que ya debía estarlo hace tiempo. Y no pocas veces lo he deseado. Esclavo nací y esclavo viví la mayor parte de mi vida, y cuando pasé a ser liberto, me quedé en la casa. No conocía otro mundo. Nunca me casé ni tuve hijos. ¿Para qué? Me bastaba con servir bien. Era mi orgullo, lo único que poseía. Al morir los amos, me tiré a la calle a predicar la palabra de Dios que había escuchado y jamás leído. Mendigaba el pan y regalaba la palabra. Imagino lo que hubiera sido tener un hijo esclavo y verlo morir así como a ese angelito, pero prieto como yo. No, mejor no, siempre no. Pero qué digo, qué mejor descendencia que esta que ustedes contemplan. No tuve hijos, pero en este cuadro soy el hijo predilecto del maestro Oller. Si no, ¿cómo es que ocupo el centro mismo, el eje a donde el ojo va obligado, de donde parte y a donde siempre regresa, rebotando de aquí para allá, de allá para acá, sin más remedio que muriendo la mirada, aquí enlazada como está mi figura con la del angelito? Soy el único que fue pintado en actitud reflexiva. Yo que en mi vida, porque hace tiempo que estoy muerto, me forzaron a la genuflexión, jamás inducido a la reflexión. ¿Y cómo no voy a pensar en la muerte, la ajena y la propia, si estuve muerto en vida, diciendo tantas veces que sí, que no recuerdo haber dicho entonces la palabra no aunque fuera para firmar una negación. No, no lo hice, perdone, amo. Ahora que me puedo negar, estoy tan cerca de la muerte que no me queda más remedio que decir que sí. Pues, ¿quién se puede negar frente a ella? No he tenido descendencia y tampoco ancestro. Quedaron allá lejos. Ni sus nombres supe y mucho menos recuerdo. Aunque sé que fueron libres, pero me es difícil imaginarlo. Pero es la imaginación la que me ha dado, sino a mí, a mi imagen, la libertad. Aquí no solo soy libre, reino en el espacio del lienzo, aunque yo sea una delgada capa de pintura compuesta de pinceladas que una junto a otras y sobre otras hacen de mi recuerdo una mayor realidad que lo que fue mi vida. Podría decir que el maestro Oller es mi verdadero emancipador. Aquí y ahora y para siempre sirvo algo más que el café con leche, la mermelada de guayaba y el cordial. Aquí soy yo, el que me sirvo con la cuchara grande y como a dos manos. Me alimento de la mirada de ustedes y de su admiración. Ya no soy el esclavo, ni el liberto tampoco. Soy el amo, el dueño y señor de su mirada. Mírenme, por Dios se lo suplico.
And in a way, this is also what, you suspect that Oller was trying to say with the prominence in which he painted.
Of course.
Centralized. Yes.
Oh, he did it in images. All I did was translate it into words.
Right.
I of that possibility always of crossing boundaries, of crossing the boundary between word and image, between theater and music, between literature and life. That's what art is all about. Transgression of boundaries. I hate boundaries. They should be abolished once and forever.
So this is an excerpt of the painting that you're just describing. So there's the angel, and then all these characters from the surrounding neighbors, the priest and the el hacendado and the owner of the house. And
maybe did we show El Negro Pablo in the painting so that, see, what I did in the book, every time a character spoke or anything happened, I kind of blurred the rest of the painting to bring forth the image that I cared for. And this is El Negro Pablo. I love that character. He has such majesty. Even though he's leaning over and leaning on a cane and reflecting his look at it, he has such wisdom and such tranquility in his attitude. And I know that Oller really made it so because he knew how to do it, how to translate that into a painting.
And Nacheli, if you can advance, because we have another excerpt that
this is
it is from another book. So
this is a more recent book. Yeah, this is a book that was published a few years ago, and it's a book that was done in 2 times. The first part of the book was done about 30 years ago, and I put it away But 25 years afterwards, I showed it to my friend Antonio Scarmeta, the Chilean writer, the author of El Cartero de Neruda. And he said, Toño, how come you haven't published that? That's perfect, publish it. So I did the other half, and I kind of mixed it in with 25 years of difference. The first part is about the things that we had lost. That's why it's called pierde en cuenta. Things that we lost, part of the past that's gone. And then the things that I have found. And sometimes the thing you lose and the things you find are the same. And you shuttle back and forth between past, present, and future. So I wrote this part. This is about the encuentros y desencuentros. This chapter is called Encuentros y Desencuentros entre la diáspora y la raíz, meaning between the Puerto Ricans in the United States and the Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. And the fact that the relationship is a very complex one, the shuttling back and forth. And I after thinking a lot about it and having dialogues with Puerto Rican from here and from there, I decided it was well worth writing it down. And I'd like to share it with you.
And Nacheli, if you can advance the slide, because again, we created a translation of that excerpt that he's going to read into English. Okay, Toño. So if you can read it in Spanish, and here is the.
Oh, this is not it. This is a description. Wait. Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. La azotea neoyorquina es llamada Tar Beach por los afroamericanos por ser su piso de brea, y la playa negra por los boricuas por ser su color. Desde esa perspectiva aérea, por más de medio siglo, nuestra diáspora en la ciudad de los rascacielos ha oteado el horizonte, posado para la cámara fotográfica con sus mejores galas y enviado a la isla imágenes de encumbrado éxito. Las recibíamos en casa y celebrábamos su brillosa superficie en blanco y negro o sepia, que llegaban por correo. Los abrigos de piel más blanca aún sobre la brea negra. La sonrisa como un sol en el cielo invernal. Ese balcón, tanto más alto que el nuestro, en el verano a veces era sustituido por otro escenario. Los escalones que conducen a la calle frente a la boca de incendio, transformada en fuente y playa sustituta, batey urbano, teatro de juegos infantiles y relatos sin fin. La mentira bien intencionada, tan blanca como la nieve fotografiada antes del deshielo y el fango, las playas sin olas y el horizonte de edificios multipisos poblaron mi infancia de idílicas imágenes de la migración. Ocultas quedaban las interminables jornadas laborales de 6 días y 10 horas pedaleando sobre la máquina de coser industrial Singer. Sin evidenciar permanecían la escoba y el mapa del conserje con el altisonante título de Super, sin mencionar las noches sin sueños del watchman en los comercios con los anuncios de neón apagados, linterna en mano. La prima de San Sebastián del Pepino, llamada Patria, que regresó pronto, pero no antes de traducir su difícil nombre en el americanizado Patriot. El tío abuelo, que nunca volvió, mi tía Consuelo, cuya foto blanquinegro la retrataba de cuerpo entero con una amiga en Coney Island, ambas vestidas con elegantes trajes masculinos de chaquetón y corbata a rayas, coronadas por sombreros borsalinos. Eran todos recuerdos de un porvenir en otro idioma y país. Nos parecía entonces venido a menos este verde vergel aburrido y pequeño, caluroso y harto conocido, cuando lo comparábamos con la gloria distante de nuestras ansias. El paraíso perdido a la distancia por desconocido, el tiempo del otro y no mío. No conocía entonces, y lo descubrí mucho más tarde, el reverso de esa moneda más aplastada que acariciada, perdido su brillo y valor. Décadas después, encontré los rostros de mis compatriotas en el tren subterráneo, la pátina del sol despintada en su piel, el peso de las largas horas laborales aminorando su paso, el hacinamiento en edificios venidos a menos, sin lograr rascar el cielo de sus ilusiones. Pero también descubrí las coloridas cortinas con que cubrían el desolado paisaje gris, con ventanas a la nada, los floridos atuendos que vestían sus cuerpos sandungueros bajo los pesados abrigos de lana, la música que, pasada de moda en la isla, sobrevivía en generaciones de nostalgia, los más boricuas manjares de nuestra cocina, como si todas nuestras abuelas hubieran emigrado al Bronx. También me expuse a la vibrante poesía neorriqueña de Pedro Pietri, combinando olores y sabores bilingües en un guiso propio. Las memorias reveladoras de Bernardo Vega, las veladas ficciones en inglés boricua de Nicolás Amor, con la inolvidable gallina, respondiendo al nombre de Joan Crawford, en homenaje a la actriz de cine Joan Crawford. Descubrí y celebré las instalaciones recamadas en brillos y texturas sin fin, catedrales de adoración cotidiana de Pepón Osorio, las pinturas collage de Juan Sánchez, en las cuales banderas boricuas y fotos de nuestros sonrientes, de rostros sonrientes, alternan vibrantes con la palabra libertad escrita en la pared para no olvidarla. Los dibujos, pinturas e instalaciones de José Morales, plasmando lo indecible, poetizando el silencio, y los poblados palmares de Rafael Ferrer, con los colores olorosos a recao y con sabor a sofrito. Bailé salsa, crucé innumerables veces bajo las banderas monoestrelladas forjadas en hierro del Paseo Boricua en Humboldt Park de Chicago. Participé con Rosa Luisa Márquez en talleres de teatro en Villa Victoria, en Boston, y con pregones en el sur del Bronx. Colgué exposiciones con Humberto Figueroa en el Museo del Barrio en Nueva York, el taller puertorriqueño en Filadelfia, Rice University en Houston, en Tampa y San Antonio, Miami y Washington, D.C., en el Honolulu Academy of Art en Hawái y en Hostos Community College en el Bronx, donde también realicé escenografías de obra de teatro con Pablo Cabrera. En todas estas ocasiones y muchas más, pude comprobar la vitalidad que una puertorriqueñidad que crece en el tiempo y la distancia frente a la adversidad y los prejuicios raciales, sociales y culturales. Como si la negación fuera su estímulo, el atropello su acicate, el arrinconamiento forzara la lucha por sobrevivir y superarse. Con la perspectiva permanente de la isla confinada por el mar, la adorada ilusión de bolero tropical nos hace creer que por ser mayoría aquí somos dueños de nuestro destino. Pero al saltar el charco, ese océano a la vez nos separa y nos une, nos convierte al instante en minoría asediada, sin otra alternativa que la de luchar para no desaparecer. Recuerdo las preguntas fiscalizadoras de intelectuales independentistas cuando Nicolás Amor presentó su primer y extraordinario libro, Nelda, en Río Piedras, cuestionando el cómo, siendo de origen puertorriqueño, escribía en inglés, y su tajante contestación con otra pregunta. Ustedes escriben en español, ¿verdad? No en taíno. Pues yo escribo en inglés, lo domino para expresar mi identidad boricua. Conquisto a los conquistadores con sus propias armas. Mi amiga, no necesito defensa de mi parte. Pero no fue fácil. Y todavía no lo es. El encuentro entre la diáspora y la raíz. Si la discriminación los esperaba en el norte, también se ensañaba en ellos al retorno, haciéndolo en ocasiones insoportable. Una desconfianza mutua partiendo de diferencias, no solo en el lenguaje, sino también en actitudes. Fomentaba el conflicto, la agresividad provocada por necesidad en las duras calles de Nueva York. Poco se avenía con el ¡ay, bendito isleño! Décadas han transcurrido de acercamiento y alejamiento, afinidades y conflictos, viajes de ida y de vuelta, mudanza indecisa. ¿Me quedo o me voy? De aquí para allá y de allá para acá, sin que se resuelva del todo nuestra transatlántica identidad. Lo que resulta indiscutible es que ya no se puede hablar, pensar ni sentir nuestro incipiente país después de siglos de coloniaje sin tomar en consideración a más de la mitad de nuestra nación que vive en el continente. En los momentos de crisis, sucediéndose con pasmosa frecuencia en la isla, hemos recibido la ayuda solidaria de la diáspora. Sorpresiva sin duda, pues fue nuestra búsqueda de bienestar la causante de empujarlos a la otra orilla. El concertado programa del gobierno colonial con las empresas estadounidenses, el que embarcó a obreros de la construcción, empleadas domésticas, costureras y agricultores como mano de obra barata para aliviar nuestra miseria, prolongando la suya. Si la diáspora ha florecido y brindado su fruto generoso, si ahora refuerza la raíz en peligro de extinción, debemos agradecerle el devolver bien por mal, el reforzar una identidad tan valiente, amenazada una vez más por el ansia anexionista y la ilusión de no ser. Una vez más, la playa demarca y unifica. El mar nos lleva y nos trae. Puerto Rico o pobre, puerto y puerta. Al fin tan de entrada como de salida, pero tierra firme, mientras la cultivemos, fortaleciendo la raíz y recibiendo para bien el fruto de la diáspora.
Muy bien dicho, Toño.
Se me salió el bosque ahí.
So,
No es fácil.
yeah, this this excerpt talks a lot about that relationship between what's happening to Puerto Ricans here,
and then it takes a lot for me to read it. It's like putting it all together all over again. I wrote it in order to get rid of it, and every time I read it, comes back and drowns me.
It's intense, but it's the clock is ticking, and we want to give an opportunity to the people that have joined us today, in case they have a comment or a question. And Lisa, I think you've been chatting with them, so let us know any comments or questions that Tonio would like to address.
I know sometimes people wait until the end to put their questions in. So if anyone has a question and you'd like to put it in the chat right now. Otherwise, it seems like everyone is just.
I must say that I have the good or bad habit of answering all questions that are posed to me. Not necessarily with the truth, I guarantee you, but it's fun for me to say it, and I hope it's fun for you to listen to it.
Yeah, so if anybody or a comment, it doesn't need to be a particular question. Tonio has a lot of opinions, so it will turn into a conversation. So I mean, since we don't have a particular question, let's.
You can ask questions.
Yeah.
Anyone. I bet you have plenty of questions, you guys. So.
Well, and this excerpt that you read, which has been my experience and the experience of so many people in the diaspora, and yet it's so much experience and so much a question about what is going to happen, right? Why it is going to continue to happen. We do know, and I think that we agree, that the unfair and colonial situation with Puerto Rico has to change. It cannot, it is, as Americans like to say, as the corporate sector likes to say, it is not sustainable.
But we don't agree in how to change it. That's our main problem right now. So divided, and we're more divided now than ever. So
I think Elisa has a question or a comment.
Yes, there's one question. It says, define transatlantic identity.
Pardon?
Define what?
Transatlantic identity.
Transatlantic identity.
Well, that's what we have right now. We have a transatlantic identity. I mean, we shuttle back and forth between here and there, de aquí para allá y de allá para acá, and that's very much our life. But that is an existential thing. It's not a political status. It's not a definition. It's an in-between. This is something that hasn't been solved yet. And there's an ever-going and growing problem we have. We try to deal with it the best way we can. but we don't agree in how to solve it. Meanwhile, we have certainly a transatlantic identity. That is nothing new. It began with the shiploads of enslaved people. That is a very important part of our heritage. So that was transatlantic, from Africa to the Caribbean. And now we're transatlantic to the States and Puerto Rico. And well, it goes on. I am the opinion we have to solve it because it is not tenable anymore. But we don't agree.
Lisa, anything else?
No, that looks like the only one. So I don't know if you have any more questions, Carmen, if you want to wrap it up.
Well, I mean, we're just having a conversation. You know, I agree with Toño that there is no clear path to a solution because, unfortunately, we are very divided on what everybody sees as a potential solution, and they're diametrically different. And in all of this, you know, Puerto Ricans, which is part of the conflict, do not really have the power to change anything. It has to go through the United States Congress. So that's another
because that goes to the heart of the matter, which is we are a colony. We do have no power to determine our fate. It's determined for us in the US Congress, and they don't agree either in what to do.
Correct, but you know, because we are, you know, focusing on the arts and how those you know, those conflicts are reflected in the art. I mean, in your written piece, it's very clear, but also, you know, what you describe in your piece is that, you know, this is a, you know, it's a divided country, right? 3.5 million people live in Puerto Rico, 5+ million live in the United States.
By the way,
and yet there is a culture, a defined culture that is transatlantic, as you described, but there is a culture.
Oh, the culture unites us certainly, and also the language. Now that we're speaking of a divided country, United States is not far from us in terms of division. United States right now is a divided country. Unfortunately, it's very much split, almost in half, between right and left, or whatever they call it. But we're in a very touchy situation right now. It's a time of decisions, and the horizon is not clear, neither here nor there.
So just to also tell people, you know, give an idea of any additional work that you're doing at this moment. Are you working on a particular project
I'm opening a show next week in Museo de San Juan called Prendas de vestir y desvestir, garments to put on and take off, and Atacama, and his clothes. And I is envisioning the desert of Atacama in the north of Chile, which is a dumping ground for garments used and new, the international dumping ground, toxic, poor people going there to find clothes and getting sick. It's horrible. I'm doing a show on that. And that's next week. The week after that, I'm going to Chicago, where I'm fortunate enough to be hosted in National Museum of Mexican Art, where I'm reproducing the Ofrenda de Muertos I did some years ago at the Universidad del Claustro de Sor Juana in Ciudad de Mexico. And I'm very touched because it's Ofrenda de Muertos, no, Ofrenda puertorriqueña al cine mexicano en blanco y negro. And I believe, somebody may correct me if not, this is a National Museum of Mexican Art, and it's only exclusively for Mexican artists, both from Mexico and the States. And I believe I may be the first non-Mexican to be invited to show there, because anyway, I lived in Mexico many years. I did Ofrendas de Muertos over there, and I just did this one. And I grew up in Puerto Rico with Mexican cinema in black and white. That's part of my sentimental education.
Right. I was gonna say, and it responds to our growing up, right? Because we grew up with all these, all the characters that are presented. Showed me the videos. Jorge Negrete.
Oh, Maria Felix.
Maria Felix.
So
Yes.
And it's complete. I have these drawings that I did on charcoal in black and white of scenes in Mexican movies, and also a video we produced here in the workshop where we animated and the actors become skeletons in drawings. And I'm so eager and so proud to be able to show it to the Mexican diaspora, the way, and having a way unite the Puerto Rican diaspora in Chicago and the Mexican diaspora, because we share the same problems, we feel the same pains and the same joys. So I'm very enthusiastic about going there.
Well, keep us posted on that, and I think that we'd like to, not exhaust you to death. We've been talking for an hour and a half, and thank you for bringing your work to Taller one more time, for sharing your incredible experience as an artist, as a Puerto Rican, and the activist that you are with your work and your incredible mind. And I'm gonna turn it back to, unless you have one final comment to make, I'll turn it back to Lisa to take us home.
Well, I just, being in Taller Puertorriqueño in Philadelphia, even if I'm not physically there, it's for me always like a homecoming. So I feel so at ease over there with you all. And I'm proud to partake in the great work you're doing over there. I always say it in Puerto Rico, we have to learn from our people in Philadelphia the way they can do things. Hacer de un limón una limonada, to really, against all odds, get people together and working together and doing the wonderful things you do. And that's why all of us in Puerto Rico can do join in forces with you, because you are the vanguard of our culture. So
thank you, Antonio. Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you everyone for attending. This video will stay up on YouTube, so feel free to share it. And Antonio's books are available in the Villa de Burgos bookstore, both in store and in our new online store. And then just a few quick reminders again, the next Meet the Author event will be on September 21st. I'll put the link in the chat for more information about that. Feria del Barrio will be on Sunday, September 11th from 12 to 6. And Antonio's show will be on view in the gallery through September 18th. So definitely come by to check that out if you're able and you have not already, or you want to come again. So thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you to Taller for putting this program together.
Gracias, gracias. Hasta bien pronto. Además, nos vamos a ver pronto en Filadelfia también.
Bravo.
Chao. Good night.
Good night.